today I'm going to be going over 15 Roblox Rivals tricks to outsmart your enemies. And if you guys do want keys or a bundle for yourself, all you have to do is drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and be alert to my future videos. Anyways, guys, for the first trick that we're going to be talking about, we're going to be talking about the trowel boosting trick. Now, the trowel is actually an unlockable item and it is incredibly overpowered. Basically, you can build a little foundation with building blocks, which you can use to deflect enemies. But a trick that not a lot of people actually know about is that you can actually boost yourself up with the trowel to actually get a crazy height advantage over your opponents. Basically, to do this trick, you have to walk up to the trowel that you've placed and slide jump and swing, and you'll go crazy high in the air. I personally use this trick to outsmart my enemies, and when I do this trick, they always get super confused.
What? Where were you?
This trick is best on maps like docks and construction because you can actually swing yourself super high up in the air and actually use the height to your advantage. And here's an example of me using this trick to destroy my opponent. Now, this round we're playing docks and I'm using the sniper because I actually want to get a quick snipe off of my opponents using the trowel. So I know that my opponent is on the other side of the map and is likely trying to get high ground himself. So I lay down some foundations with some building blocks and I prepare for a slide jump. I boost myself really high up in the air and boom, I get a quick snipe and I easily win that round. Crazy thing as well, this is only the first out of many tricks that we're going to be going through in today's video, and as the video progresses, I'm going to be talking about even more overpowered tricks you definitely want to pay attention to. Like this next one, which is the grenade jump. Now, the grenade jump is a very classic trick, but surprisingly, not many new players actually know about this trick. To do this trick effectively, you want to go up to a ramp, you want to pre-fire your grenade, and then look back and boost yourself forward with the grenade. This is a very easy and free-to-play trick that you can actually do to quickly maneuver all around the map, and you can even pair this with a slide jump to go even further. You'll know when you've done this trick correctly when you're flying around the entire map and your enemies are not going to be able to see you coming. This grenade trick definitely works the most on the maps like Arena because it's quite small and you almost always know when your opponents are going to go. So using the grenade trick to actually boost up and to surprise your opponents is a very overpowered way to quickly win that round. However, I will say that if you do this trick too many times on the same opponent, that they are going to predict your movement and you will end up losing eventually. But this is a pretty good beginner trick to try out and it's definitely very useful in multiple different circumstances. The grenade jump is quite useful, however, it is not as useful as this next trick that I'm going to be talking about. Anyways, now let's talk about this next trick, which has to be one of my favorite tricks in all of Roblox Rivals, and that is the scythe dash whilst doing damage to your opponents. Now, this is a pretty self-explanatory trick, but it actually takes quite a lot to master effectively because it requires a lot of prediction. So I'm sure you guys all know what the scythe does by now. You can select the scythe and you can boost in the direction that you look at. However, there's a separate layer to this simple trick that we can actually do to make it incredibly powerful. Basically, if you're playing on a really small map like Arena, you want to try and predict your opponent's movement as much as possible. And when you actually quick scythe dash, you do want to click so you can swing your scythe and do damage to your opponents. Now, the reason why this trick is so difficult to do is because this requires a lot of prediction. You have to read your opponents well enough to actually know where they are going to be when you dash upwards. However, if you can pull this off effectively, it is definitely one of the most powerful tricks in the game because you're going to be dealing 1/3 of their HP without even getting into a gunfight and shooting the first bullet, putting you at a massive advantage. If you're able to pull this trick off consistently, you'll definitely destroy all of your opponents. Now, the katana is probably one of the most annoying weapons in the game. I'm going to be honest with you guys. When people katana spam, it is very frustrating, because I always end up dying to the katana for some reason. Whenever my opponent spams katana, I get so frustrated. However, this trick negates that entirely. Basically, if you guys didn't know, you can use something like the exo gun or the slingshot to actually hit your opponents through the katana dash. This is a very simple trick, but yet very effective, because if your opponent loves using the katana is basically going to be useless if they are not able to deflect bullets back to you. The reason why you cannot actually deflect these weapons is because they are either explosives or projectiles. Basically, any explosive or projectile weapon is not going to be able to get hit by the katana. So you'll just keep dealing damage to your enemies like nothing ever happened. What makes this trick even better as well is that the exogun also is incredibly powerful. You can do 25 damage to your opponents, and if you hit all 6 of your bullets, you can instantly kill your opponents, which I think is incredibly overpowered. So if your opponents love to katana spam, I would definitely recommend using this trick because yeah, it is super useful, at least for me. Another trick inside of Roblox Rivals that you should definitely start using is a quick reloading trick. Now, this is an insanely common trick that all of the top players use inside of Roblox Rivals because it actually saves a crucial amount of time when reloading. Basically, to do this trick effectively, once you reload, once this little progress bar actually finishes, that is when you have actually finished reloading. You don't actually need to wait for this secondary timer to start shooting your gun again. You can just swap to another weapon and swap back to your previous weapon that you had equipped before and start shooting again. It is incredibly overpowered and saves a lot of time when fighting your opponents. Just for some comparison, you can see the difference that it makes right here. Me and my opponent are both going to reload our assault rifles, except I'm going to do the trick and he's not going to do the trick. And look at how overpowered this is, and look at how many shots I hit sooner than him. As you can see, yeah, incredibly overpowered. So if you're not already using this trick, I would strongly recommend doing so because it is incredibly overpowered and will definitely win you a bunch of fights. I will also mention that this is literally for every single weapon as well. Every single weapon has the same trick that you can utilize, so it is very important to know how to do this effectively. Anyways, guys, for this next trick that we're going to be talking about inside of Roblox Rivals, we have wall running. Now, wall running is a very situational trick that you guys should definitely learn how to do because it'll definitely give you a lot of mobility inside of Rivals. Basically, if you don't know what wall running is, you can basically just hog the wall and ride all the way to the other side of the arena map so you can start shooting your opponents. This is an incredibly useful movement technique because you can just quickly dash towards your opponent's side of the base without even really needing any actual movement. Basically, if you guys want to do this trick, it is very self-explanatory. All you have to do is go up towards the ramp inside of arena or any map that has a wall and a ramp on the side of it, and you just want to go right to the corner and slide. But make sure you are hogging the wall. You can literally just press W and slide while pressing A or D as well, and you'll be able to slide across the entire wall, getting to the other side of your opponent's base and absolutely destroying them. Anyways, for the next trick that we're going to be talking about, this is a very situational trick yet again, and this is for the construction map. I actually teased this earlier on in the video, so if you've been paying attention, you would already know this trick. Basically, combining the grenade jumping trick in the construction map, you can actually go towards this crane site over here to get a crazy height advantage over your opponents. Basically, to do this trick effectively, you need to make sure that you're on the right side of the map and then use the grenade jump trick that I already told you guys to grenade jump all the way over to this crane over here. You could also pair this with something like the sniper and the scythe to get a crazy advantage over your opponents. If you're able to one-shot headshot them all the way over from the crane, they are definitely going to be so confused and rage quit. So I would strongly recommend using this trick if you're playing construction. The best thing about this trick, to be honest, is that it works on 2v2s, 1v1s, 3v3s, 4v4s, basically every single game mode. It's incredibly overpowered. Anyways, guys, for the next trick that we're going to be talking about, we're going to be talking about a very common trick inside of Roblox Rivals that basically every single pro uses to absolutely destroy their opponents. And of course, I'm talking about pre-firing. Basically, if you don't know what pre-firing is, it's very self-explanatory. Basically, you just want to click your mouse cursor when you think your opponent is going to enter the screen. Now, because human reaction time is unfortunately not that great, you have to sort of prep ahead of time instead. That way, it will give you a nice little advantage over your opponents because that way they're going to take a lot longer to react if you're constantly shooting them. If you're shooting them maybe half a second before they are, combine this with some crazy peeking techniques and you'll be able to just absolutely destroy your opponents. And for the next trick that I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be teaching you guys something very overpowered to counter the Molotov grenades. Have you guys ever been put in a situation where your opponent loves to Molotov spam? Well, did you guys know if you actually use the smoke grenades, you can actually pull out the Molotov and the flare guns. Now, since the flare guns recently got buffed, they are actually a lot more powerful than they used to be. So a lot of people are actually going to be rocking the flare gun. And a very easy counter to it is the smoke grenade. Because not only can you combine the smoke grenades to make a really large ball, you can also use it to put out the fire, which I think is incredibly overpowered and will definitely help you. And will definitely help you if your opponent loves to spam Molotovs or flare guns. Alrighty, guys, and the next trick that I'm going to be showing you guys is very overpowered in a game mode like arena and backrooms. Basically, if you guys didn't know, you can actually combine the slingshot with these maps to actually create a very overpowered combo where you can actually eliminate your opponents without even looking at them. Let me explain. Basically, if you guys don't know what the slingshot does, you can actually use a slingshot to bounce balls off of the walls. And basically, when you combine this in those kind of maps, you can actually hit your opponents without even needing to look at them or even needing to be facing them if you aim it correctly. This is a very overpowered way to actually deal some nice damage off of your opponents because they're not even going to be expecting it. Since the slingshot does have pretty decent fire rate and decent damage, as long as you're able to consistently hit your opponents, you can actually deal a crazy amount of damage to them. You can even test this out in the shooting range and find a ton of ways to actually eliminate your opponents using the slingshot. And just to show you how overpowered this is an example of me using this against my opponents to absolutely destroy them. Now, in this situation, my opponent had chosen back rooms, which is very unfortunate because I did not want to play the back rooms today. Anyways, I had equipped the slingshot as well as my regular assault rifle. And since I know that I can effectively use this weapon to destroy my opponents and hit them through walls without even looking at them, my opponent got really confused. He didn't even know what to do. And yeah, bro just sort of stood there and took it. He didn't even try to kill me. The thing that I like most about this trick is that I can actually hit multiple enemies with this. It's not exclusive to just hitting one opponent. The balls actually continue bouncing for a couple more times, and you can actually do collateral damage with this weapon, so it is extremely overpowered. Anyways, guys, for this next trick, I'm actually going to be showing you guys how you can destroy your opponents with the Subspace Trip Mine. If you guys don't know what the Subspace Trip Mine does, basically it is like a landmine. Once your opponents actually step over it, it blasts them into the sky and does a crazy amount of damage to them.
What? Subspace Trip Mine?
This is an incredibly overpowered utility weapon and can instantly kill your opponents if done correctly. Basically, for a map like Docks, you can actually place this at the entrance of some of the buildings. That way, the second your opponent actually walks into the building, they will just get annihilated. And it will give you a nice, cheap, and easy kill to destroy your opponents with. There is a lot of different spots which I'll put up on screen right now where you can actually place the Subspace Trip Mine and your opponent is almost guaranteed to go in those directions. Be wary though, because the Subspace Trip Mine does make quite a loud sound, so your opponent is very clearly going to hear that you have Subspace Trip Mines. However, if you utilize the positioning correctly, you can absolutely destroy your opponents, and I'll have no doubt in my mind that you will definitely win all of your games. Anyways, guys, for the next trick that I'm going to be talking about inside of Roblox Rivals, this is actually a nice, quick, and easy way to fling around the map with the chainsaw. Basically, if you equip the chainsaw, when you use its charging ability, you can actually go really, really quick if you decide to slide jump while using the chainsaw. Combine this with the ramp technique where people boost up on the ramp and you can go insanely far and get some crazy distance on your chainsaw. I actually see a lot of people using this trick already and you can get some crazy distance over your opponent. It's sort of like using the grenade jump, except in my opinion is a lot more effective. And here's an example of me using this against my opponent to absolutely laser them. Alright, so we're playing the arena map and I already know that the chainsaw is very, very good on arena. So I'm actually going to use this to juke out my opponent. So I'm just going to run up here and I'm going to slide jump. And I already know for sure that my opponent is probably not going to be able to hit me because he's not going to expect me coming. And as you can see, I was able to successfully beat my opponent because I was able to rush over and instantly kill him very quickly. And that's why I really like using this trick. Anyways, guys, for the next trick that we have on this list, I'm actually going to be talking about the paintball gun and how effective it is to blinding your opponents. Now, very similar to what the flashbang does, surprisingly. If you guys don't know what the paintball gun does, basically, if you hit a headshot on your opponent gets splashed with paint and it blinds them in the center of their screen. You can actually use this to your advantage to completely confuse your opponent. Your opponent is not going to be able to see at all, and you are just going to absolutely destroy them. I really like the paintball gun over the assault rifle because of the extra damage that it does, as well as blinding my opponents. I think that is incredibly useful, and if you're able to confuse your opponents like that, you will definitely win 90% of your game. The paintball gun is definitely the best gun in the game right now, so if you have this weapon unlocked, yeah, you are just going to absolutely destroy your opponents. Speaking of blinding your opponents, there's another really overpowered trick to do this with the flashbang. Now, the flashbang is a pretty self-explanatory weapon. What I see a lot of noobs doing though is actually just regularly throwing the flashbang and waiting for it to go off. This is not what you want to do. Instead, if you're playing a map like Arena or Splash or anything that's super open or enclosed, basically you want to ignite your flashbang, let it cook for a little bit, look up, throw it up straight up in the sky and then quickly look down. That way, it's going to really confuse your opponents. It's going to actually blind them. And then you can simply rush up with something like the scythe or the paintball gun, pair those two together, and you will just absolutely destroy your opponents. They're not even going to be able to see you, let alone even shoot you. It is incredibly overpowered. That's why I like this combo so much, because the flashbang is very overpowered for blinding your enemies. And even the best players in the game, they're not going to be able to win if they can't even see you. Unless they're cheating, of course, but then you would know already. Anyway, speaking of cheaters, there's actually a really nice way to counter aim assist slash cheaters slash aimbot inside of Roblox Rivals. Now, basically, this is a very common technique that a lot of pros use. And that is actually peeking while you have the katana and then going back to safety. This is a very simple trick to master, and I see a lot of pro players or inexperienced players using the katana peeking method to actually deal a bunch of damage on your opponents. This works particularly well if your opponent is using a sniper, because that way, if they one-shot headshot you, they're just going to instantly kill themselves, and they're going to be way more cautious for the next round, giving you a nice edge over your opponents, and then you can start playing a little bit more aggressive, because they're always going to be worried about you having that katana, even if you don't have it equipped.